education system was, but the student themselves was looked at as fine gold. And they are treated like fine gold. And we're not supposed to learn virtues in our school system now, but there you learn virtue. How to control your thought, control your action, devotion to purpose. These are things that were taught in school. My main man, Amos Wilson, he says, we have been robbed of our minds and our thinking skills. What does this result in? It results in a mind that cannot influence the world, a mind that has no real ability to act on reality, and a mind that is useless to ensuring the survival of the individual and the community. And this is the new growth industry, locking our children up like white on rice. How do you know how many people are going to go to prison? Go back to Newsweek magazine, January 15, 1990. An article called The Mark of Cain. And what does it say? The number of prison cells are determined by the reading score level in the 2nd and 3rd grade. Now, once I got into the school system, my students in 9th grade can't read. I can't teach them biology. In the middle school, they can't read, so I can't teach them the sciences. So since I was a sub, I went all the way down to the 1st grade to find out what was happening with our children in school. Nothing. Nothing. See, and if I reach up and jab slap one of them smart mouth people, then their mama's gonna be all up there raising hell. I'm gonna get fired, and this kid ain't doing nothing and just cursed me out. And he's 7 years old. Low crime rates are bad for white-owned private prisons. So we're going to set up a system where we get all of them. You know, I'm a cop, just look at me the wrong way. Oh, we're going to lock you up for a little while. Okay, we can't read this one, sorry, but this is the quote directly from the Doctrine of Discovery, Pope Nicholas V in 1452. And the Doctrine of Discovery was taken word for word out of Deuteronomy. You can go to Deuteronomy 20, 10 through 20, and you can look up what it says. If the men don't bow down to you and say they will be your slaves, kill them all. Take the women and kill them. Take the children and put them in perpetual slavery. And this is what we believe in, many of us with all our might. This is another one, showed the destruction of the Indians. The Bishop Bartholomew de las Casas wrote about it. What he said, before the arrival of the Spaniards, there had been more than 600,000 souls on the island. When he left, there wasn't 200 people alive. And these are the people that we've allowed to give us our rules, our other kind of stuff. The top of that says, like father, like son. The choice is yours, not theirs. You lead by example. Now to switch a little bit, this is the next topic we need to deal with, is our food. We're poisoning ourselves with the food that we eat. And it's all designed to funnel down to the children. And the children eat all them hot fries and all that other kind of stuff. They get so high, by 9 o'clock in the morning, the children are so high they can't even sit down and concentrate on doing their schoolwork. And then they drink those sodas. And they put that other stuff in the sodas. So it's about being healthy in your mind, and it's about being healthy in your body. If you do that, you can eat as much as you want. First thing kids do is grab some hot fries. Hot fries got these food dyes in them. All of these food dyes are cancer-causing agents. But we just giving them to the, chocolate folks. It don't matter if they eat poison. We want to keep making money off of them. Wake up. The junk food you eat and drink may be killing you. If you hate your children, feed them McDonald's. Let them drink some of that pop down there with the aspartame and other stuff. Oh, we got another thing to do. Poison food. Are you addicted to a poison food diet? The government doesn't care because it's a multi-billion-dollar business. By keeping you sick and drugged up, you become easier to control and manipulate. Dare say no. There's a chart. They got everybody drugged up from the beginning of life all the way down to the end of life. And this is the last slide on that one, I believe. A matter of life and death. Eating that sugar. Eating that sugar. That's a matter of life and death. We have been fed death as food for profit or something more insidious. See, I don't make this stuff up. They put it right out there in the newspaper. That's why I read the newspaper every day, because they hide it up in there somewhere, and I collect that little stuff just to prove, I'm not making this up. They did this. Okay, that's the way I wanted to introduce the libation today, because we've got to get something in our mind. We've got to change the way we're doing this. We've got to change the way we're doing this. Okay, I'm going to stand right here and just read right here. First off, for the children that were here, I asked for permission to speak. What was behind that?
That's the children stand up.
That's the children. Children, stand up, please. Stand up. I just asked you guys a question. Why did I ask the elders to give me permission to speak? Was it just being nice? Was it a matter of our culture? Yes. Yes. You always ask the oldest person before you begin an activity. And you don't start until the oldest person comes in and sit down. How come? Because when you get old, you slow down. You don't walk as fast as you used to. Children, young people got to give you a chance to come in. Okay, one more question. What is an ancestor? Someone that came before you? Yes. Let me give you another example of ancestor that you may not know. Everybody in this room. We are our ancestors, and we're living here today. Amen. So how are we going to want people to remember us after our time comes to make the transition? Are we going to be a jerk and people say, oh man, we're glad they're gone? Or are we going to be something else? Okay, something more positive. Okay. Happy soon to be New Year, everyone, on this 28th day of December. December 2019, the European year, or the year 6,260 in Nile years, according to the Nile year calendar. So the immediate question is, who gave folks permission to just erase 4,000 years of African history with no comment about it? Okay, today on this third day of Kwanzaa, called Ujima, for collective work and responsibility, we are gathered to celebrate our culture, to celebrate our African selves and our relationships with each other. Albert, pass me a bottle of water, please. No, I'll use this. Ujima means to build and maintain our community together and make our brothers and sisters' problems our problems and to solve them together. We use the cultural holiday called Kwanzaa to celebrate ourselves and each other. Kwanzaa was started in 1966 by Dr. Maulana Karenga to celebrate African people and culture. Kwanzaa is used to reaffirm the African identity and history that are a part of us. We are a people who have had their memory, identity, and culture removed from them. Simply put, we have lost our minds. Kwanzaa and our gathering today is our attempt to heal those wounds, celebrate our accomplishments, and return us to our righteous African mind. We are a strong and beautiful people, and Kwanzaa helps us to recognize that strength and beauty. Before we get into our program, there must be something spiritual that happens. We must have a spiritual affirmation, as African people are a very spiritual people. That's not it. We must make a clarion call for the hearts and minds of our people. Please give me just a minute. I wanted to put this up for you all to see it, and you wouldn't have to just hear it. We must acknowledge what has brought us this far. In the African tradition, we believe that as long as we speak the names of our ancestors, they are with us. So we remember our ancestors and call their names as we pour a libation to start our activity or meeting. After I call the names of some of our ancestors, each of you may join in the pouring of the libation by calling the name of an ancestor. We say Ashe after each affirmation of the libation and after each name is called. To begin, we first must acknowledge the nature or God, the all, the mother of God, or the creatress, creator of the universe, who provides all things great and small, seen and unseen, known and unknown. We say Ashe.
Ashe.
In the name of our ancestors who began the march of humankind in the womb of Mother Africa, we ask those ancestors to be with us and strengthen us and help us build, plan, and establish a vision for the future and then bring that vision into existence.
Ashe.
In the name of our ancestors, marching and navigating down the Nile, Congo, Niger, and Amazon Valley, laying down the foundations of civilization and culture, building their temples and pyramids, some now found under the ocean on ground last above sea level 10 to 12,000 years ago in South Japan, South India, North Africa, and South America too. Building their seagoing vessels and sailing all over the earth, populating all the lands of the earth, leaving their ships, dwellings, buildings, and their skeletons for all the world to discover. The presence of dugout canoes, rafts, reed boats, and other types of watercraft among black populations throughout the world with very similar designs comes from the reality that they were first invented in Africa and carried or sailed to their present locations. It should be no surprise to find dugout canoes in West Africa sewn with rope or fired in the same way as those in Australia, the South Pacific, or southern Japan. The similarities between reed boats of Lake Titicaca in Middle America and Lake Chad and the Nile River today are good examples of the spread or transmission of ideas from Africa in prehistoric times. The same technological tools and thus their probable uses were unearthed in layers of mud rock dozens of thousands of years apart in time, indicating not only the high thinking involved in transmitting skills, techniques, and tools over vast periods of time, but more importantly, the use of a language, both spoken and written, to be able to achieve this fantastic cultural feat. The ancient black African mariners and sailors who left their lands along the coast of East and West Africa and perhaps the Nile-Sahara region took a wide variety of crops on their journeys. They planted these crops throughout Asia and the South Pacific as well as the Indian Ocean. The African had domesticated cattle and genetically altered wild grain types into domesticated types, producing a grain healthy for human consumption, not poisonous for human consumption as is being done today. All by about 16,000 BCE, or before the Christian era, about 7,000 years before those in the so-called Middle Crescent, Fertile Crescent. The Polynesians, who consist of a major group in the Pacific Islands, along with the Melanesians, are people filled with melanin, are a mixed group who look like their brothers and sisters on the African continent. The similarities in the cultures of black people of the present-day South Pacific, Australia, India, Africa, the Americas, and the entire tropical belt is striking and is due primarily to diffusion and travel in early prehistoric times.
Sure.
There are many cultural habits and activities of great similarity practiced in Africa, yet they have also been practiced by these Africans in the diaspora. We owe our allegiance and support for the ideas and principles maintained and transmitted by Africans like Khufu and Khafra and their queens, Menkaura and Imhotep and their queens, Narmer and Scorpio and their queens, Taharka and Hannibal Barca and their queens, and other great Africans who built for eternity, who built the greatest civilization the world has known, who left Mother Africa and took this civilization with them to all the lands of the earth. We ask these ancestors to bless and strengthen us and help build a vision for now and the future.
For sure.
We ask those Africans who have a tradition of building in and with Ma'at, of building for eternity, building their temples, the greatest of institutions along the Nile, who built the Karnak Temple Complex, the Luxor Temple Complex, those great university complexes, the temple complexes under Hapi, the Nile River, due to the building of the dam, the so-called Great Dam, and the drowning of many learning centers and people. Families like those of Mena, Narmed, the Amenophases, the Amoses, Queen Hatshepsut, the families of Queen Tai, Nefertiti, and Akhenaten, and also the Tutmosis, and the other great families of the Middle Kingdoms of Africa, and on into the New Kingdoms like Pianki, Taharka, and Shabaka. Africans raising another African Renaissance. We ask these Africans who continue building for eternity, building spiritually, building physically, building for African greatness, to join us and be with us and give us strength and give us a vision for the future. We say, Ashe. We ask those Africans who spread the culture of Ma'at, spiritual living, spiritual understanding, spiritual harmony with the laws of the universe, spiritually seeing the reflection of the Neteru, or God within, as well as the Neter, or God without, of working in a loving, caring, cooperative, brotherly and sisterly, family and community-like manner with the best interests of the now and future of the children. Seeing the Neter, or God, work in the flood and overflow of the Nile and the new crops that would emerge. Seeing the Neter, or God, in our lives and our duty and obligation to be the best we can be. We ask those Africans who taught the concept of Ma'at, of spiritual renewal, of correct living and thinking, of brotherly love, of harmony and balance. Those Africans who manifested these spiritual and physical concepts in the great city of Zimbabwe, the great stone cities of Zimbabwe, who built the great Swahili civilization on the east coast of Africa, who went into the highlands of Ethiopia and built the great Coptic Christianity of King Lalibela with 12 stone churches from the ground down. Absolute wonders of the world. Africans taking this concept of building spiritually and going into the savannah of West Africa and building the great empires of Ghana, Mali, and Songhay. Africans taking the traditions of harmony with the laws of the universe and going into the forest and building great forest states and empires like the Yoruba, the Akan of the Bamoon, the Zulu of the Antebellum. We ask those Africans, misnamed Indians or Native Americans of the great North and South American continents, the First Nations people, as they call themselves, those of Australia, the East Indians, the Polynesian islands like the Tasmanians and Aborigines, the Olmecs, the Maya, the Inca, the Mixtec, the Mexica, or the Aztec nations of the Triple Alliance, the Tenochtitlan, the Texcoco, the Tlacopan, the great builders of the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan, the Cahokia people or mound builders of Central and Southern North America, the Arawak and the Benai of Bolivia, Peru, the Algonquian and Iroquoian people of North America, the Wari and the people of Tiwanaku in South America. We ask those Africans who left their genetic imprint all over the world to have this tradition of building, spiritually and physically, this tradition of engineering and architecture to be with us and strengthen us and guide us in a vision of the future. We say, Ashe. Just a couple more minutes, then we're done. We ask the Africans who shared this with other people, such as the ancient Hebrews, who came in weak and left out of Africa strengthened, with a people organized, coming in as a remnant. We ask those Africans who opened up Africa to those Greeks, who came in as individual scholars, who once they learned this African knowledge, went home and empowered the Greeks to produce a civilization. We ask those Africans who allowed the early Christians who took the African formula of Ma'at and laid the foundations of Christianity, and later Islam was welcomed into the Nile Valley, and it found the key to building a worldwide civilization called Islam. We ask those Africans who opened up their value system, culture, and traditions to others like the Hebrews who built Judaism, and the Greeks who built their civilization, and the Coptic Christians who laid the foundations for Christianity and later Islam. We ask those Africans to be with us and strengthen us and help us build a future for ourselves and our children's children's children. We say Ashe.
Ashe.
We ask those Africans who took the traditions and culture into their villages when the great Ma'afa, the Holocaust from that despicable doctrine of discovery, the papal bull of Pope Nicholas V in 1452 that was and is still imposed upon us, that sickness of death and rape, of destruction and rape, of annihilation and rape, of dispossession, the outright taking of all land and all possessions, and rape. That is what us Africans had to and still do live through, all in the name of Jesus or God because their religion says so. Beautiful Africans, innocent men, women, and children, pulled out of their villages, beaten and marched in the coffles into the forts and dungeons all along the West African coast. Wonderful Africans, sucked out of their villages and put into the holes of European death during the Ma'afa, and put onto plantations in South America, North America, and the Caribbean as animals, as Kafirs, as niggers, something less than human, to be worked to death. Glorious Africans who resisted being kidnapped from their villages. Brave Africans who resisted while in the dungeons and the hulls of the ships. Warrior Africans who resisted on the plantations. Warrior Africans who resisted when they were put in chains of enslavement. Warrior Africans who resisted when their flesh was being ripped open through beatings. Proud Africans who resisted and went into the hills of South America and Brazil, and following in the tradition of African building, built the great African Republic of Palmares, 100 years of African glory from 16 to 1700, part of our history of liberation and struggle. Strong Africans who went into the hills of Jamaica and other Caribbean nations and built the great Maroon community. Thoughtful Africans who escaped and set up the free African communities in Guyana and Suriname during this enslavement period. Strategic Africans who joined with the Native Americans and went into Florida and Georgia and set up the great civilization of the Seminoles who fought the American government. We ask those native Black Americans who inhabited California, Mexico, and the Southwest Territories, who had to fight the Europeans when they were finally discovered. They had to fight for their lives, their land, and their wealth. This great tradition of resistance by proud African people we need to acknowledge, which produced some of our greatest leaders of resistance in America and the diaspora, like Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, Gabriel Prosser, Harriet Tubman, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, Minister Elijah Muhammad, and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We have a tradition of resistance in this greatest struggle that any people have ever known, that the world has ever known. We have this dual tradition, this twin legacy of building and living in Ma'at, in harmony with the laws of the universe, and of resistance in the Ma'afa against the greatest evil of death and destruction the world has ever known, all directed under God's authority through his middle men. We have this great tradition of building for eternity and resisting during enslavement that we must continue. It is necessary for us to identify with and use these two great traditions to plan and build for our future in this 21st, or rather 64th century, or risk genocide. We ask those Africans that remember these traditions and have used these great traditions to join us and be with us and strengthen us and help give us a vision to continue our existence in the future.
Ashe.
No, I know that the celebration of Kwanzaa, we celebrate 7 principles. First principle is what?
Excuse me, I wasn't finished reading yet. Then you can have a chance to say that,
You
please.
don't read for the last 2 hours. You ain't finished.
We ask those recent ancestors whose names we have to call: Malcolm X, W.E.B. Du Bois, Kwame Ture, Maurice Bishop, Frantz Fanon, Dr. Amos Wilson, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, Professor Edward Scobie, Drs. John Henry Clark and Yosef Ben Yaakov, our beacons of light, Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Queen Mother Moore, Sister Helen Brown, Dr. Betty Shabazz, Dr. Francis Quest Wilson, Obadeli Williams, Mr. Belt Middleton, Gil Scott Herring, Nick Ashford, the mighty Michael Jackson, Nelson Mandela, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, Trayvon Martin of Florida, Michael Brown of Ferguson, Missouri, Antonio Martin of Berkeley, Missouri, Eric Garner of New York, Alan Locke of Rapid City, South Dakota, Emantic Bradford Jr., wrongfully identified as an Alabama shopping mall shooter, was shot 3 times from behind, and other victims of institutional abuse. Others who we wish to name and join them in our continuing cause of humanity, justice, and liberation. Please call out the names of some ancestors that you would like to be with us and help give us a vision to name our presence on this earth in the future. Dorothy Campbell. Wesley Campbell.
Shaka Zulu. Booker T. Washington.
Ashe.
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 Ashe-o.
Ashe-o.
Thank you all. I know that was a little long, but thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, we have our, thank you very much, Brother Kwabena.
My pleasure.
Let's back it up for Brother Kwabena. Okay, we have our main speaker who's here, Brother James Wilson. He just stepped out to carry his son to the bathroom. So we're gonna have a few minutes of drumming until he come back in and he'll be presenting.